about
Recording in progress.
the concept of, we began just a few lines beforehand in the paragraph towards the end of page Zion, where he was speaking about the idea that on Rosh Hashanah, what's the significance of Atam Ntzavim Hayoim? It says today. Why today? What's the idea of the significance of the word today? So that today is going on the day of Rosh Hashanah. The day of Rosh Hashanah, all the Nitzoitzes, all the sparks of all Neshamas go up to their source above, and he starts explaining what's that idea about all the sparks of Neshamas going up above, by starting to say that Rosh Hashanah in general, the idea of the head is about inclusive of all the chayis of the entire year, the way it comes out of Ak. In other words, in Ak, in Adam Kadben, the chayis of the entire creation of all time was all included over there, and Rosh Hashanah comes out from that like one point that includes all the life force in one glance, and all the energy of all time comes out just for Rosh Hashanah. In other words, just for the following year comes out on Rosh Hashanah, and now the head includes all the chayas of the entire year. So the Rebbe continues. This idea is expressed concerning the vision and the coming out of from there for everything and for everyone. So he says the top of page Ches, line 11, like the expression the Gemara in the Gel Rosh Hashanah concerning the Rosh Hashanah, shekol boy olam oivrin lefanav kivnei marim. All inhabitants of the world pass by him like bnei marim. There's different explanations in it. One of the explanations is like sheep. They used to pass through an area or a fence or an opening where only one lamb can pass by at a time. Meaning, all the different creations get their chayas individually throughout throughout the year is manifest on Rosh Hashanah. Like we say in the part of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur davening called Unusana Toikif. Like it's also explained in Ateres Rosh. Ateres Rosh, for the Mittler Rebbe, is the one that speaks about Ateres Rosh. Rosh deals with Rosh Hashanah, also deals with Yom Kippur. It deals with how Rosh Hashanah is called the head, and it's not the beginning of the year, and so on. It's the head of the year, because the head includes all the chayes. So it says in line 4, all the specific matters throughout the entire year are they're in such a manner that every single day is doing its own thing. In other words, it's not like every day of the year is a carbon copy of the next. It's not that way. Though it comes down in a general manner in the head, but each day of the year has its own function. Just like in the body, the head includes the chayas of the entire body, but the eye doesn't do the same thing that the mouth does. The mouth doesn't do the same thing that the hand doesn't do the same thing like the foot. So each one has its own unique chayas that it gets down from the head of the year on Rosh Hashanah. Beginning from the general distinction between weekdays to Shabbos. That's a more general distinction about how we have different times of the year that each one is distinct. And then there's, of course, other distinctions of times of the year. Yet, despite the fact that all of them are included, still in all, the way they are included, in Rosh Hashanah, it's all not differentiated. It's all in one point. It's not divided yet. It's only one point of life and vitality that has the potential for the Shabbos day versus the weekday day. But here it's mixed up altogether. So now, this is only, he brings this in to explain what does it mean. We said at the beginning of the paragraph that on Rosh Hashanah, all the neshamas rise up to their source. Like we said earlier, Nitzavim, You rise, you're going up beyond Havai Lekechem. When does that take place? Just like in time, there's a time when everything is combined together, so too there is neshamas that are all combined together at the time of Rosh Hashanah. So he says in line 8, just like it's concerning time. Kachu gam b'neshamas, so too it's neshamas shekol nitzayt neshamas nitzavim misalm b'm koydem b'ofen shel iskalus lachodim ke'echad. All the sparks of neshamas are standing fast and are rising up in their source in a way of intermingling totally as one. So on the time of Rosh Hashanah, Atem Nitzavim Hayoim, because it's Hayoim, because it's the day of Rosh Hashanah, the day of Rosh Hashanah is Kailel, all the scholars of Chayis. In a similar vein, Atem Nitzavim, you are standing fast, you are having Aliyah after Aliyah, like we spoke about earlier. Ilui Achar Ilui, we are going up to the source where all the neshamas are combined and as one, like in one point. Another idea in the explanation of you are standing today. Like it's brought down in Medrash Tanchum. Ma hayoim meir, just like day shines, daylight, af atem chulu osid loher lechem oir oilam. So to you, the Hashem in the future will illuminate for you an everlasting light, or the light of the world. But we're going to see it's more the emphasis on the everlasting nature of daylight and so on. This means that the daylight, daylight that's beyond candlelight and beyond even torchlight. Like it's explained in Masechta Soita, that daylight is the most powerful and the greatest and accomplishes the most. Moira al oilam. This indicates the everlasting light. Daylight indicates the everlasting light of a person. It's not in a way that's not of a person, but what shines on a person. It's not in a way that's temporary. That afterwards this light ceases. Rather, it's in a way of an everlasting existence. That's how this light is. Just like the sun always exists. So, that's the idea that you are standing today. It indicates the existence and the everlasting nature of the Yidden in such a way that's beyond changes. Similar to where it says, I Hashem am unchanged. So the same thing, Am Yisrael is as well also in a way that's unchanged. So these are more ideas that are derived from this pasuk. Now, these ideas that are in this pasuk can sometimes be seen to be only limited to a specific way. The neshamas are elevated, the neshamas have this unity, the neshamas have this connection. What about when the neshama hits the body? All that was mentioned previously, Shoyrish Neshamas Yisrael, top of page test, Kifishem Lamaila, the way they are above, in the way that you are all standing together. You're higher than Shem Yud Kivavke. You go up to the level of the sparks of the Neshamas above. That's all unity, that's all oneness. What happens when the Neshamas are embedded and invested in the body? But following this, Nasim Chiluki Hadargis, the Rashechem Shiftechem Ad Choyte Vetzechem Veshoyrim Mercham, afterwards becomes the different levels of your heads, your tribal heads, in other words, Sanhedrin heads, etc. Until in the second pasuk it says there is the wood choppers and there is the level of the water carriers. How does that come about? Because this is the purpose of our descent down here. Is it similar to what we said before about time? Time starts off all connected and all together in the Rosh Hashanah. They're all joined. They're all in the head without any division. But afterwards, from Rosh Hashanah, it spreads out over the year into the detailed days of the year. This is a Shabbos Hamshacha, this is a Yom Tov Hamshacha, this is a weekday Hamshacha, etc., etc. So he says, Shizeo, the reason why there's these distinctions is because of Klotmas close, saying because of the general idea of the descent of the Neshama to the lowest place, Ad Loilam Asiya, until the world of Asiya. V'loidak Asiya Ruchnis El Asiya Gashmis. Not only the spiritual level of Asiya that we speak about a lot of times when we talk about the four worlds, Atzilus, Bri, Yitzir, Asiya, we're referring to the Asiya HaRuchnis, the spiritual chayas of our physical world. Not necessarily do we always refer to the physical world, our physical world, in the term Asiya. But the descent that the Neshama went through is not just Asiya HaRuchnis. It went also down to the physical world of Asiya. This physical, material world, that's the lowest in levels, that there's nothing lower than it. For the sake of this descent of the neshama into the physical world and doing what it has to do in this world, that's why the Eibishter made this entire chain order of descent. Or before we even get there about the neshama, for the sake of this world, that's why all the higher worlds were created. Like the Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya, the goal of the creation of all the worlds of the whole Seder Ishtalshlus is not for a higher world. How come? Why can't we say it's for the higher worlds? Since the higher worlds did not gain anything by coming into being. They only lost. They descended from what they would have been when they were still part of part of the Eirei Sof. So Atzilus only lost by becoming Atzilus, because when it was included and hired in Atzilus and the Eirei Sof, it was so much more. Hainu Shadarg HaYoser Niles being Nagilu, even the most highest level in levels of revelation, it's also descent from the light of his face. So therefore, we cannot say that the purpose is in the Olam Misal Yoinim. The Alter Rebbe says, the goal, the purpose is this low world. So it arose in his will that there should be a pleasing spirit before him. When does that take place? Specifically in this world, this world that has filled with Sitra Achra and Klippa. So over here we could subjugate the Sitra Achra, we could transform darkness to light. And how does that take place? That's specifically through the avodah of Yidden with the fulfillment of Torah. And Torah also has this thing that the primary location of Torah is down here below. Also the Torah descended and was given down here below. Like the famous Maimer Chazal and Moshe Rabbeinu asked Malachim when they wanted to have the Torah, did you descend to Egypt? So that means that where is the Torah meant to be given? Only a place where there is a Mitzrayim and where there's a Yeridah to Mitzrayim. And therefore, for their sake, B'shvil Yisrael, B'shvil HaTorah, for the sake of Yidden and for the sake of Torah, Nivra Olam, the world was created. So that's where you have the different levels of Rasheichem, Shiftechem, Tilchoite Veitzecha, V'shoiv Memecha, when the Neshamas are embedded and invested in this world. Any questions before we go on? Okay, last line on page Tess, I think it is. This descent is for the sake of an ascent. Top of page Yud, only through its descent down here below. So now the neshama reaches a higher level than what it was prior to this descent. Okay, do a Mishal Baal Shem Tov, like it's known, the analogy of the Baal Shem Tov. From a king that had an only child. that was perfect. He had all types of qualities possible. And the king sent him away to a faraway place to reveal his capabilities and his talents from the state of potential to actuality. Because as perfect as the son was, but he had no opportunity to really act on all of his qualities. So he sent them to a faraway country to help build it up and make it devoted to the king and make them aware of the king, etc., to reveal and to bring out to the fore those hidden talents that the child had. So the Rebbe says a very interesting thing. This idea of bringing out from the state of potential to the powers, is not just something used concerning explaining why the neshamas came down here below, but it's actually brought down in Kabbalah as also one of the reasons for the Eibishter's creation of the world. So he says in line 5, the brackets, Al derech shemetzinu b'negel close in Nabriya. Similar to what we find concerning the general idea of creation, Shemavur Beitz Chaim, it's explained in Kabbalah, Sha'atam Laza, one of in Eitz Chaim, it's explained the reason for creation is, that should become revealed the ultimate perfection of his capabilities, of the Eibishter's capabilities and powers. So we mimic Hashem. Hashem created the world to express his powers, because Hashem has unbelievable powers, but it's not yet revealed until you have somewhere where it could be revealed in. So he made the worlds. That's where he reveals his powers. In a similar vein, the Eibishter sent the neshama down here into this world, so that the neshama that has unbelievable powers that it's in Gan Eden, when it's in Gan Eden, doesn't become revealed. When it comes down here, it becomes manifest. So he says in line 8, like it's brought down the famous Hemshech Mamorim from the year Tafresh Samach Vav, about the idea of revealing, both it's explained about the revealing of the soul powers of the Yid, and also it's explained at the beginning of Samach Vav, this word of the Eitz Chaim, about the Neshama, about the Eibishter creating the world to reveal his powers. So it says in line 9, the Indians that Nasai, the Avoid Olamata B'chol Prote in Yonim, this is accomplished down here through our service below in all the specific matters that are hinted in the different levels of your heads and your tribes, etc. So now he's going to have a very interesting approach. In the simple explanation of the pasuk, we're talking here about 10 levels divided over 2 psukim, because we said there are different types of people. The way the Rebbe is going to explain over here is, in my personal avodah, in my soul powers, in my gilui hakoiches that I have to do, that I descended down here below, every individual has the part of Rosh Hashanah, has the part of Choyte Vitzecha, etc., etc. And that is because he's engaged with this world, so he manifests all these different types of powers. And in this itself, he's going to explain there are 2 psukim, if you remember, 5 in one pasuk, 5 in another pasuk, because one, he's going to say, I'm giving away somebody's name, one is internal, one is external. Let's see further, line 11, that this begins with the idea of your head. This indicates the idea of Torah. And this is also dependent the fulfillment of mitzvahs. Great is Torah study that brings to action. So Torah and mitzvahs are all the avodah that's hinted in Rosh Hashanah and so on. The ad lechol ish Yisrael, until he gets to the level of kol ish Yisrael. Now, if Yiddish we used to say halt kop. What he's going to explain over here in the word kol ish Yisrael. He says, k'mevur ba'ira Torah. like it's explained, that Tzemach Tzedek explains, Al Pi Pirish Harava Magid Al Aposik Me'ez Kol Ish. The Mizritcher Magid has an explanation on what it says, Me'ez Kol Ish Asher Tidvenu Liboy, from every person that his heart will donate for the Mishkan. It's in Parshas Teruma. So the Mizritcher Magid says, Shezeu Esh Inyan Eshkoil. Eis Kol Ish means the level of Eshkoil. Eshkoil, the Gemara says, there are someone that's called Eshkoilos. Literally, it means clusters of grapes. Eshkoil can be divided into two words, Ish Koil, Kuloi Ish. What does that mean? Eshkoil, the Gemara says, what is a level of a person that's called Eshkoil, someone that is Ish Shakoil Boy. So the Mizritcher Magid takes it that it means also a person that's kulay ish, that's entirely an ish, meaning ish is referring to the nefesh elokis. Normally, we are not entirely a nefesh elokis. We are a nefesh elokis and nefesh abamis. Kulay ish means we are entirely an ish, especially in our pasuk. So he brings it back to our pasuk. V'zeu gam hapirush dechol ish Yisrael. That's what it also means, the idea of kol ish Yisrael. Not in the literal sense, every Jewish person, because we already said we're including everybody. Atem tzamayim kulchem. But rather, shaydei ha'inyan di Yisrael. Through the idea of a person being a Yisrael. Why is a person called Yisrael? Al Shem Kisar Yisrael Melakim V'Goymer, because you overcame and overpowered even with the level of Elokim. Levader as Nefesh Bahamis, to refine the Nefesh Bahamis. Elokim is the Midas HaTzimtzum, the root of the Nefesh Bahamis, etc. Shemitzad Atzma Madreges Behem. The Nefesh Bahamis on its own is a level of an animal. That's why it's called Nefesh Bahamis. It's not an ish, it's a behemoth. And how does he overcome the Nefesh Bahamis ideas, kafia, through subjugating and sublimating it? Azaynase kulay ish. Then he becomes entirely an ish. So that's what it means, koil ish Yisrael. Through Yisrael, through overcoming the Nefesh Bahamis, Sarisam Melakim V'Amnashim Atuchal, then he becomes kol ish. He becomes entirely an ish, a person that is only godly. So essentially the Rebbe is saying the first pasuk, Roshechem, Shiftechem, Ziknechem, Shetrechem, Kol Ish Yisrael, is all my internal avodah of Torah and mitzvahs and different things. The Rebbe doesn't go into all the details, that second half of the pasuk, that is already talking about reaching out and dealing with another. In addition to this, there also has to be the work with another, because when you're working with another, so then the other is a level of a receiver. They are on the receiving end. That's the idea that says in the pasuk, your children, obviously children receive from the parents create the children, and then they educate and give the children both physical things and spiritual things. And also the wife is the level of a makabel. Because a wife is a level of a makabel. Like Chazal say, who is considered a worthy and appropriate wife, someone that fulfills the will of her husband, that does what her husband wishes. So in other words, the husband is the one that wishes, then the wife fulfills. That's mashpia makabel. All of these are till shayv memecha. The water carriers, that is even the lowest level, can move in Gama Teres Rabbeinu. Hazoken bezeh, that he says that it's shoiv choyte veitzecha is a very negative thing in a way, or dealing with the negativity. You can look at the side that he brings from the Hayoim Yoim. He says on the left side of the page in the commentary, he brings from the Hayoim Yoim that it says line 73 on the commentary on the left side. Rabbeinu Hazoken b'Yosef Adayin b'Vitebsk. It's the Hayoim we just recently had while he was still in Vitebsk. Amar Pam Torah al Pasuk Atman Nitzavim Gomer. He once said a Torah on the Pasuk, you are standing, etc. Our parsha. V'tirgim, and he translated mechoyte veitzecha, someone that chops eitzes. Lashon eitzah from the word counsel and advice. Tzrichim laker tzarabes machshavas b'leiv ish. One has to chop out, uproot the many thoughts of not positive things that's in the heart of a person. And shoyev memecha, we have to draw your water, meaning lisha v'samayim shmatzrichim kol minei tainuk, to draw out the water which gives forth all types of delight. In other words, draw out all of our tightness. So in other words, we're reaching through all the different levels until the lowest level. Top of page Yud Aleph. My days through doing this avodah of the neshama down here below and dealing with all the 10 levels of avodah that's in this pasuk. Becomes the ascent, that for that purpose was the descent of the neshama down here below. We reach a state and we're becoming absorbed and drawn into the body of the king. The opposite of shoyev memechel, to become drawn up into the entity of the Eibishter himself. That's the content of passing through the covenant that we asked about before, that it's the two partitions, one on each side, that are seemingly not one thing. In the covenant, there are two levels. The first level is we make a partition on this side and a partition on the other side, and we pass in between. In such a way that Yidden and the king are alone. The purpose of this mechitza is to cut them off, to separate them from everyone else. There isn't yet the unity because these two mechitzas, like we said before, are not together. They're not part of the same entity. It's not like two halves of the same animal. That is, they're still considered like two separate entities, even though they are surrounded by the two partitions. But then there's a further level in bris, a higher level in bris, that's symbolized by going between two parts of one animal. And afterwards we come to the second level. To become absorbed into the body of the king, to become one existence with the king. Like the teaching of Magid on the pasuk, make for yourself two trumpets, that he divides the words chatzoitzeros and he calls them chatzoitzeros. Yisrael v'Hakadosh Baruch Hu Yachol Moishtei chatzoitzeros shmashlim. There's Hashem and the Yidden are like two halves. Two half forms that they complete and perfect each other. Like Chazal say in the pasuk, that when the Eibishter calls the Yidden, my sister, my beloved, my friend, my dove, calls me my complete one. What does that mean, my complete one? Tamasi means te'umasi. Te'umasi means sheknas Yisrael mashlemes kiviyachol oisi yizbarach. That metaphorically speaking, Yidden complete Hashem because we're two halves of the same whole. So he concludes the nice Dalet. This is what it means you're standing all together before Havai Lekechem. Like the continuation of the pasuk, to establish you for him today as a nation. Through this comes down, being written and sealed for a good and sweet year, children, life and sustenance comfortably. For every Yid, for him and for his household. Through them, through the Yidden, this impacts the entire world. Like the pasuk says, also the world was in their heart placed. Till the main point, the Mashiach will build the Beis Mikdash in its place. The Kavis Nichei Yisrael, he will collect all the scattered Yidden, like it says, that Hashem will return and he will collect you from all the nations. Like Rashi explains that the meaning of Vishav, one of the explanations over there is that the Eibishter himself will do personally each and every person. To look to like it says that you will be collected one by one, the Bnei Yisrael.